What is up, everybody? My name is Jericholic8704, here to give you another installment of Raw is Jericholic8704. Today we have Raw from August 11th, 2003. I apologize for being a little late on this. To be honest, I came down with strep throat for the past week, and I had to move into my new dorm. I'm an RA at my college, so I had to move in a couple weeks early. But I'm here alone in this, I'm just completely desolate dorm room. But, it's a single, so that means more commentators. So I don't have to worry about my roommate. Sometimes when you come in, I have to pretend I was on the phone, or, make up some sort of BS excuse as to why I was talking about wrestling alone. But, now I can probably get away with it a little better. But, hopefully, probably I'll get caught at some point because I am an RA, so that means someone's going to have to need me for something. I can't just glide by. So I'm going to have to be interrupted at some point. My brother would make fun of me if I, got interrupted in one of my commentaries. But anyway, let's dive right into Raw from August 11, 2003. I really don't know what to make of this Raw. Well, first off, unlike most Raws this summer, there was no opening promo. There was no opening promo of the recap of Kane's murderous rampage. Kane had nothing to do with the opening promo. It was just the theme song, Bischoff, Austin, yada, yada, yada. So as the opening pyro went off, there was a giant Spike logo that was brought down to the stage, and pyro went off around that because apparently this is when the new TNN became Spike TV again. So, Spike, Network for Men. When I saw the Spike logo, I do remember, old school Spike. I really can't remember a lot of shows I would watch on Spike. I watched Impact, obviously, because that was on Spike. From, 2006, 2010 is, when I was watching Impact. And then I watched, I would occasionally watch 1,000 Ways to Die. I don't know if any of you remember that show, or if it's still on, even. I don't even know where it's at. And then I remember one other show I remember on Spike TV. It was called Mansers. I don't know if any of you remember that, but it was the dumbest show I've ever seen in my life. It was so stupid. It was literally it's just questions guys have. So it's answers for men. Mansers, huh? Ding ding, what a pun. But it was so stupid. It was so lame. The questions were so dumb. It would just be what you can do to prevent your wiener from getting sliced in half by your zipper, and what would big boobs be like on the moon? It was just so stupid like that. It was a really, really stupid show, but it was the only shows I ever remember from Spike. I didn't watch Spike very often, aside from Raw and Impact, so just a little dive into Spike. Anyway, we have an opening segment. Bischoff comes out, and he's all smiles, and he comes to the ring, the crowd's booing, and he asks Lillian to once again announce that Bischoff had beaten Shane McMahon last week on Raw. So he shows the footage of Kane killing Shane McMahon, and then Bischoff said he always had respect for Vince McMahon and his big-breasted, mature wife Linda, and he even had a tiny bit of respect for Stephanie McMahon, but he has zero respect for Shane and calls him the Sinatra Jr. of the WWE, which I thought was a pretty funny line. Then all of a sudden, JR comes out to probably the biggest pop of 2003, like JR's music hit. It's the classical, what am I talking about? It's the classic Oklahoma fight song, but, the fans were kind of just sitting there cool, JR's music. I think they thought it was going to be some sort of shenanigan because Bischoff is Bischoff, but when JR came out, the crowd fucking erupted. They screamed their heads off. This was crazy, the pop JR got. It just shows, how much of a connection JR has with the crowd. You know what I mean? God, they love JR so much because, JR felt like a friend. You know what I mean? He felt like a family member. He felt like someone you could trust. That's what made JR so great, and that's why he was so loved by all the fans. They just loved someone they could connect with. So I really, really enjoyed seeing JR get such a big pop. He always got pops. When I went to Raws where JR was the commentator, everyone would cheer for him because he was one of the most consistently over guys in the company. It's amazing how it works. And you look at someone like Michael Cole, who's just an untrustworthy announcer who, sometimes, Michael Cole isn't bad by any means. He's okay. I think he's fine. He's passable. I'm fine. I don't think it's a disgrace that he's the voice of WWE because he has proven that he's a good commentator. I just don't think people have forgiven heel Michael Cole of 2011, which was just ruining every single show he was on. It was the worst movie he's ever done. But this isn't about Michael Cole. It's about JR. So Bischoff's all pissed and he asks JR why he's here because, as you see, JR is still quote-unquote injured from almost getting killed by Kane. JR's oh, Bischoff, you're really proud of the way you throw your weight around and then how you set up Kane to burn me alive and all that. And he said, I know what Kane means to Raw, so I'm not going to press charges. However, due to unsafe work environments, I'm going to sue your ass, Eric. And then all of a sudden, like at the announcement that JR will sue Eric Bischoff. This has nothing to do with like actual wrestling. Like no wrestling is taking place. There's nothing going on in ring action wise. All JR said was, I'm going to sue Eric Bischoff. The crowd fucking blew up. They were screaming their heads off. This was absolutely insane. One of the craziest sights I've ever seen. This opening segment blew my mind at just how much the crowd loved JR. I mean, the Quad City, they had an amazing crowd. Like, the crowd responded to everything. They were probably the best crowd I've ever seen so far when I've been doing all these Raw reviews. But absolutely amazing crowd. A really, 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 really awesome segment featuring JR and Bischoff. And another thing about Bischoff, and what makes Bischoff so great, and why I think he's such a great heel authority figure, and probably one of the best authority figures, is he was a heel authority figure. And I know, like, a babyface authority figure is always fun, but you can play around with a heel authority figure. And the thing about Bischoff is, he did throw his weight around. You knew he was in charge. You knew he was kind of untouchable in a way, but you knew eventually he would get his. Something bad would happen to Eric Bischoff. Something unfortunate would happen to Eric Bischoff. And they've been teasing on Raw that something bad will happen to Eric Bischoff in the past couple weeks, but he just escapes by playing politics or just pulling some sort of string, and Bischoff can get out of it. But it's just the allure that, oh my God, something might finally happen to this son of a bitch that just keeps throwing his weight around. And you look at Raw today where you have Stephanie McMahon. Now, obviously, I'm not saying Stephanie McMahon should get killed. You know, I don't want that to happen. Or she just gets destroyed by like 3 guys that just beat the shit out of her. I'm not saying that. But she just gets her comeuppance. I mean, that WrestleMania 32 main event was incredibly disappointing. You know, everyone liked Triple H, but they didn't really care about him being champion. And they really didn't get behind Roman Reigns. But when he speared Stephanie McMahon, the place cheered because it's like, finally, she gets some sort of, you know, comeuppance. You know what I mean? Like just some... She got what was coming to her. You know, she kept interfering in that match, and Roman Reigns just speared her. It's like, God, that's the one way to get Roman Reigns over for 5 seconds, but still. So the crowd's cheering. Bischoff says he can work this out, and then he tries to kiss up to JR by basically burying Coach. He's like, Coach, what the fuck are you doing in JR's chair? Get the hell out. You're a second-rate announcer. You're in the shadow of King and JR, and he basically just kissed his ass and just buried Coach on air. And then Stone Cold comes out, and Austin says he's going to have a contract drawn up. Austin says JR won't sue Bischoff unless he competes tonight on Raw. And Bischoff reluctantly assigns this contract. He doesn't even read it. He's just like, oh, I know what it means. I'm going to have a match with Shane McMahon. Haha. So he signs the contract without reading it. And then Austin's like, well, I don't know what you're talking about because Shane McMahon is not cured from his injuries from, you know, the tombstone on the stairs. Your match tonight is with Kane. And the crowd, again, erupts. That being said, once Austin came out, the segment got really, really awkward. I mean, it really wasn't the fault of any of the three, like, mic-wise. Like, it's not like they stumbled over their words or anything. There were just these really long, awkward pauses. The segment really dragged out once Austin got in there. Like, when it was just JR and Bischoff, the segment was really, really good. But when Austin came out, like, he just added these really awkward pauses. I mean, he did that the entire show. So maybe Austin was just having a really weird night. But anyway, the segment was fine. You know, it dragged a little bit. And by the end, I'm like, okay, you can end this segment because, you know, you're opening with a promo. But whatever. Anyway, it was a good segment. The crowd was really, really into it. More than any... It shocked me how much they were into it. But anyway, first match on the card, we have Scott Steiner and Stacy Keibler versus Rico and Jackie Gayda. Maybe it's just the Quad Cities, but Steiner got a huge pop. Like, when he came out and the sirens went off, the crowd cheered and cheered and cheered. And then Stacy came out and she got even a bigger pop. Rico comes out with Jackie, and the best part of the show was Rico impersonating Stacy Keibler's like very seductive ring entrance. How like she would like put one leg in, one leg through the rope, and just slowly dip under the top rope. Like Rico did that exact same thing, and Jackie, you know, sat on the ropes to open it up for him like Scott Steiner would do. Thought that was hilarious. So Rico does some shit with Steiner, and then Steiner just kind of beats him up and kicks the shit out of him. Jackie tags herself in, and her and Stacy go at it. They do the spot with multiple roll-ups. It actually wasn't that bad. I was like, I don't remember Stacy being all that great of a wrestler, and I really don't remember Jackie being all that great either, but they were fine. I mean, it really wasn't anything horrible. I wasn't offended or anything. It's still, like, you know, wasn't the greatest thing I've ever seen, but, you know, it was fine. And then they both hit a double clothesline, and they go for a tag, and as Stacy's about to tag Scott Steiner, Test comes out and pulls Steiner out from on the apron. As Stacy's watching Test beat the shit out of Scott Steiner, Rico sneaks up and hot shots her. Jackie hits a leg drop on Stacy for the win. Half a star. It was fine. Nothing great. Nothing, you know, to write home about. After the match, Jackie and Rico get the hell out of there, and then Steiner gets on the mic and says, "This is bullshit," and he screams bullshit, which was hilarious. Steiner says he's tired of Test and he wants a match tonight. Test says he's on, but not tonight, and then Test says next week we'll wrestle under one condition. He puts Stacy on the line. Stacy, in her classic Stacy Keibler teenage voice, says, "We accept." Then we had a backstage segment with Evolution. Flair says Austin is drunk with power, putting him in this no DQ match against Goldberg and banning Evolution from ringside. Triple H says Austin and Bischoff are ruining their lives, and he says he has a torn groin and he has to defend his title against 5 guys in the Elimination Chamber. And then Randy Orton's like, "Hey man, you're only defending it against 4 guys because we're defending the World Championship." And then Triple H is like, "Oh, I know your Evolution to the grave," and yada yada yada. It was fine. It was nothing. And then Kane before they go to commercial break. Kane is seen being driven in through the paddy wagon. Then we had the Dudley Boyz versus La Resistance, and I was about to scream because I've seen this match more than Booker T and Christian, if you can believe that. The Dudleys come out with an American flag. I mean, what is new? Like, this gimmick, they always talk about repeating gimmicks in wrestling because they work. I don't know how well this one works. The foreign guys and then the new guy coming out with the American flag and American flag gear. They do this with Rusev, and does it really help, the likes of Titus O'Neil and Zack Ryder? I would argue that it really doesn't help, but, that's just me. So La Resistance rushes to the ring, they brawl for 20 seconds, and they try a was-up spot on Sylvain, and then Dupree comes in and smacks the Dudleys with the American flag for an obvious DQ. I was actually so happy that this happened, because this match literally happened for like 30 seconds. I was not about to see a 10-minute tag team match with the Dudleys and La Resistance again. So they break the flagpole in half and then pour French wine on the Dudleys, and as the Dudleys are laying there, motionless, they take an American flag and drape it over them like a blanket or something. Then we had the greatest backstage segment of all time, Molly and Goldust. Goldust tells Molly he notices that she has an interest in gold in reference to her women's title. Goldust says he wants to introduce her to someone who is totally not boring. And then there's just this awkward pause, and then he's just like, "I want to introduce you to someone who is totally not boring." And then Lance Storm shows up, and he's all in like Goldust drag. He has the wig on and the paint and everything. And Lance Storm, on purpose, of course, does the worst Goldust impression I've ever seen in my life. He was so bad and just so uncharismatic. And then Storm says, "I want to say congratulations on your ass. And then Molly eventually slaps him and walks away. And then he finishes his sentence and he says, "Congratulations on your ascension in the women's division," which I thought was a fantastic line. What a great moment. Then we had another backstage segment that was pretty weird. HBK and Kevin Nash. So Shawn asks Nash what he's going to do about his hair versus hair match with Jericho. Nash undoes his ponytail. He flips it and he says this mane isn't going anywhere. Both say they're going to win the Elimination Chamber match and like, "Whoa, we're best friends, but it's every man for himself. I'm going to win that world title, yada, yada, yada." And then Goldberg shows up and he's like, "You know what? I think I'm going to win the world title." So they all three kind of have a little bit of a stare down. Then we also had the next greatest moment of this Raw. Christian comes out to Booker T's music and he does his entrance, and Christian brags about injuring Booker and winning his title. Christian says since it's the debut of Spike TV, he has found the perfect opponent for his match. And then all of a sudden, Spike Dudley's music hits. As soon as I heard that, I thought this match is a 5-star match for the pun alone. I don't know why I didn't figure that out because it wasn't announced that it was Christian versus Spike Dudley. And even when Christian said I found the perfect opponent, considering this is the debut of Spike TV, I don't know why I didn't put 2 and 2 together, but I didn't. But when the music hit, I fell out of my bed. I was laughing so hard. This was the best moment of this Raw. So Spike Dudley comes out on fire, and he's beating the shit out of Christian. He hits a suplex on the rope for some heat, Christian does. He also hits a huge gut buster. Like, Spike Dudley flew in the air. It was pretty crazy. Christian goes for a suplex, and Spike rolls him up for a near fall, and then Spike hits another suplex for a near fall. Spike hits a double foot stomp, and Christian gets his foot on the rope. It's a very close to near fall. The crowd was actually buying into it. Spike went for a Dudley dog, but Christian threw him into the corner, and then Spike comes out of the corner all dazed and confused, and then Christian grabs him into the unprettier, hits it, and he gets the pinfall victory. In all honesty, guys, this is actually a really, really good match. It really wasn't all that long, probably like 6 or 7 minutes, but for what it was worth, I was thoroughly entertained. Like, thoroughly entertained in more of the matches I've seen on these Raws and the Raws of the current era. You know what I mean? Like, this match was actually really good. I mean, I always had a theory that, like, when you're someone like Spike Dudley or Steven Richards or Val Venus, like, those really low-tier mid-guy, low-tier guys on the card, when you get a match on Raw, you're going to make the most of it. You know what I mean? And that's what Spike did. I mean, he's only been in like a handful of matches. I would say he's been in 2 matches since I've been reviewing these Raws, starting with May 12th? That was the first one I did. So, Spike Dudley really made the most of this match. And it was really, really good. It was really entertaining, and I enjoyed it. I'm going to give it 2.5 just for the pun and, for Spike's believability, for the crowd buying into Spike. It was a really, really fun match, and I really enjoyed it. Then we had a backstage segment with Kane and Bischoff. Kane comes out, and Bischoff shows up all, scared and everything. He runs up to Kane and thanks him for his assist last week in his match against Shane. Bischoff says Kane can pin him 1, 2, 3. He'll just lay down in the middle of the ring. Kane doesn't even have to do any work, and he can get the pin. Kane says he's not going to do it Bischoff's way. Kane says he's going to do things his way. Then we had Kane versus Eric Bischoff. Before the match, JR shows up, and the crowd once again gives him a huge pop, and he comes down to the announce table, and he takes Coach's spot, and King's like, you're going to get the hit, Coach? Like, come on, beat it, hit the bricks. JR's going to take his spot back. Coach reluctantly takes off his headset, and then gives it to JR. There's some tensions brewing there. In a great moment, King says, the show will not be the same without Coach. It will be better. And I thought that was awesome. JR says he hopes Kane kills Bischoff, and then Kane is locked up forever in jail where he belongs. So Bischoff and Kane come out. Bischoff's just praying when Kane's coming to the ring. And I should note again, of course, because Kane's all chained up with the police following him, his entrance was longer than usual. So you could hear more of the slow chemical theme, which I think is such an underrated theme for Kane, especially now that I'm listening to it. I really wish they'd edited it so the lyrics could come out earlier, because like when the song hits its chorus, it gets really, really, really great, especially for Kane. So I would say go back and watch Kane's entrance because it was awesome. It wasn't as awesome as the first time he came out with the cops. That was the best entrance Kane has ever had. I'm convinced of it. But this was still a really, really cool moment. So Bischoff tried to lay on the mat for the quick loss. Kane catches Bischoff by the neck, and he raises him in the air, and he's teasing the chokeslam. JR is screaming on the headset. He's like, damn it, chokeslam him to hell, kill him. Like, he's fucking just fuming. He is screaming, and even Kane's like, JR, chill. Like, he's just completely losing his mind. And then Kane eventually puts Bischoff down. He walks out of the ring for a count-out loss, and then he comes back into the ring and grabs the mic. And he says, let me guess, you people would love to see me kill Eric Bischoff. And of course, everyone in the crowd cheers. And he says, I am sick of doing what you people want. Now I do what I want. So he's about to go after Bischoff. And then RVD comes out and just starts beating the shit out of Kane and throws him out of the ring. RVD goes for a top rope splash. And then Kane sidesteps and RVD lands on the guardrail. Then Kane gets a chair and then Van Dam kicks it in his face. And then he puts the chair underneath Kane, and he goes for a 5-star frog splash, but of course he misses and smacks his chest right onto the chair, and then Kane eventually hits him right in the face. Like, he did this, RVD took this chair shot hard. It was just smack right in the face, you heard it, and it was bad. I'm also sorry if you can hear something in the background. That's my toilet. It just kind of, does that occasionally. Anyway, I'm not recording this in the bathroom, just so you know. I'm recording this, like, my dorm room's kind of a suite, and I have my room, and then right across is the bathroom. So, as I can look out, I can look into the bathroom. So it's a little unsettling, but I want to let you know I'm not taking a shit while recording this, which is possible, but I'm not doing that. So, yeah, he hits the loudest fucking chair shot I've ever heard in my life. This was absolutely sick. RVD took this right to the head. He kind of protected himself. He had his arm up a little bit, but I can't imagine this was, very pleasant. But anyway, it was a very, very, very rough chair shot, but, whatever. Then we had Trish Stratus versus Molly Holly versus Gail Kim. So Trish is making her entrance, and then Gail Kim is interviewed by Terry as Trish, is, pandering to the crowd and everything. Terry says, hey, Gail, well, why'd you do what you did last week? Why'd you turn on Trish? And then Gail's like, oh, now you're going to pay attention to me? Why didn't you pay attention to me when I was the women's champion? And then she makes her way to gorilla position. So Molly Holly comes out, and then Gail Kim makes her entrance. So they all go at it. Trish hits a Thez press on Gail Kim, trying to get revenge. Honestly, like, obviously the women were not treated as great as the men were in WWE in terms of, like, match time and storyline progression and promo time and all that. It's obviously times have changed in the past 13 years, but you really had a good group of girls here. Like, you had Trish, Molly, Gail Kim, Victoria, Lita was coming back. You had a really solid women's division. And I mean, obviously there wasn't as big of a focus on women's wrestling as there is now, but I mean, you really could have had some really good programs going. And I mean, they did. I mean, in late 2002, that Trish Victoria match from Survivor Series, great match. And the story behind that was really, really good. And they put a lot of effort into that match. But I mean, I feel like just most of the time they just kind of phoned in the effort with the ladies on Raw. I mean, there was no saving the women's division on SmackDown. There was a reason the women's title was exclusive to Raw, because the women's division on SmackDown sucked. I mean, I don't even know who you had. Tori Wilson, Dawn Marie, Sable. That was it. So really, there were no women's matches on SmackDown, essentially. You had Nydia, too. But they didn't really start wrestling until they came to Raw, because that's where the women's title was. But you had a really solid group of girls. You know, a really, really solid group of wrestlers who were really good. And, I mean, Molly Holly, Trish Stratus, Gail Kim. And, I mean, Jazz was injured, but add her to the list, too. And you had Ivory, too, who was also really good, but they didn't use her as much. But Ivory was also still a really good wrestler. So you had a really solid division. I really wish they'd done more, because, I mean, the climax of, you know, the like the early 2000s women's division was Trish Stratus and Lita in the main event of Raw, and Unforgiven 2006. I feel like that was like the climax to those, you know, to that division. But I mean, it was a really solid division, and this match was pretty good. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it really didn't last that long, which is why the ratings like kind of low, because it only lasted like 3 or 4 minutes. But again, it proves my point. You had really, really good wrestlers, but they just were screwed because they didn't have time. No one was behind them. You know, it's just stuff like that. So Gail throws Trish onto the apron, and Molly drops her to the outside. Gail tries a suicide dive and landed right on her face. I swear, like, I've seen this in so many women's triple threat matches where some girl tries to do a suicide dive and almost kills herself. The worst was Lita. In that match with Trish on the main event of Raw. She dove outside the ring and like folded up like an accordion, but Gail Kim landed right on her face. There was a mild "you fucked up" chant from like 7 random dudes, and then after 3 seconds, when they realized no one else was joining them, they immediately just stopped cheering it. So the two heels double team Trish for a bit, and then the best moment of this Raw. I know I say that about every moment on this Raw, but this was really the best. So Molly puts Trish in a tree of woe and tells Gail Kim to, like, okay, go to the opposite corner and, like, give her a stinger splash or something like that. So Gail Kim's like, okay, I got this. So she goes to the opposite corner, and Molly's like, okay, get her. So Gail Kim just, like, runs, and then Molly just, bam, just, like, with a lariat, just decks her right in the face. It was a hard shot, too. Just, bam, right in the face. Gail Kim's knocked out, and then Molly Holly gets the pin. That was awesome. I laughed so hard when that happened. Best moment of the Raw. Then we had another backstage segment with Evolution. Triple H shows up, and he comes up with a bag, and Orton's like, oh, Triple H, what's in the bag? You know, yada, yada. Orton will not shut up about wanting to know what's in the bag. So Triple H is like, I did some convincing with Eric Bischoff, and then he pulls out a ref t-shirt and gives it to Orton. He says, you can be the special guest ref between Ric Flair and Goldberg, only if you decide to call it down the middle. And Orton's like, I promise I will. Of course I will. And then we get one of those earlier today segments. It's an old lady trying to cross the road, but of course, you know, there's heavy traffic and everyone's beeping their horns and shit, so she can't cross the road. And eventually Rosie shows up and he escorts her across the road while stopping traffic. And then Rosie says he is the SHIT, and then the old lady smacks him with her purse. Hurricane shows up and he says, no good deed goes unpunished. I guess this was necessary for this Raw. Whatever. Then we had a backstage segment with Austin and Bischoff. Austin and Bischoff are drinking and celebrating Bischoff's 2 wins, and he says, I outsmarted you 2 weeks in a row, and he says it's a burden being so perfect. And then Austin says he can prove how good he is in his next match, and Bischoff's like, what are you talking about? And he said, well, of course you didn't read your contract, but it says the winner of the Kane-Bischoff match will face Shane McMahon at SummerSlam. So Bischoff's now all pissed about that. Then we had Hurricane versus Rodney Mack. Rodney Mack beats on him forever. One single fan in a silent arena screamed, you suck, at Rodney Mack, which was pretty funny. So Hurricane hits a big clothesline for a 2 count and then hits a high cross body for a quick roll-up and a quick pin. This is a dud because it sucked. Rodney Mack attacked him afterwards, and Rosie came out to make the save. Yay, alright. So that was really a waste of time. Then we had the highlight reel with special guest Kevin Nash, probably the best segment on this Raw. Jericho says he wants to squash some of the rumors about his hair versus hair match. Jericho says when he beats Nash, he's going to have to cut all of his frizzy, unruly hair. And then Jericho says if he loses, which of course will not happen, he will shave all the hair off of his face. Jericho then does some posing with his hair. He like flips it around a bit and does some shots for the camera. Jericho says if he loses his hair, he will lose his mojo and he can't be the sexy beast that we all need him to be. Then Kevin Nash comes out with a briefcase, and Nash says Jericho is looking at this is losing his hair instead of changing his image. So then Nash tells the people to put photos of Jericho in various different hairstyles on the Jeritron 5000. Jericho takes offense to that and says, "You can't tell the Jeritron 5000 what to do, only I can." So they show Jericho in a bunch of wacky haircuts. They show him bald, they show him with a mohawk, they show him with the king cut. It's like the balding where it's just like on the sides and stuff like that. Then Jericho calls him a Nash hole, which I thought was pretty funny. Then Nash says he accepts a hair versus hair match, and if Jericho does not accept, he will beat his ass right now and cut his hair right now, because he pulls out his briefcase, which has a bunch of hair cutting tools. Jericho says his hair versus hair match is on for next week on Raw. Nash goes to leave, and then Jericho cheap shots him, and then he beats on him for a bit, and then Nash hits a side slam, and he clotheslines him over the ropes. Nash pulls out some hedge trimmers, which he uses to try and cut Jericho's hair. Jericho scurries under the ring and pulls out a fire extinguisher and uses it on Nash for a quick getaway. And then we had our main event, which ended really abruptly, Ric Flair versus Goldberg. So as Flair enters, Orton hands him something. You can clearly tell it's brass knucks. And then another random dude, this was the best part, Goldberg comes out, and then another random dude has to tell Goldberg it's time, which I think is hilarious because I love these people, random dudes that are working within the arena, just getting 3 seconds of fame by just knocking on the door and telling Goldberg that it's time to go. I find that hilarious. Flair hits Goldberg with the knucks and goes for a fast count, but Goldberg kicks out. Flair beats on Goldberg for a bit, and then Flair goes for a chop, and then Goldberg no-sells. Then Goldberg hits some slams on Flair, and then he goes for a pin, and Orton counts super slow. Goldberg yells at Orton, and then Flair grabs a chair and hits the worst chair shot ever, which Goldberg thankfully no-sold, because if he didn't, Goldberg would look like the biggest dork ever for going down to this chair shot. So Flair nutshots Goldberg, and then Flair goes for a figure four, and eventually he gets it on. Goldberg gets to the ropes, and then Orton kicks his hands off the ropes and drags Flair back into the ring. Flair works over the legs some more. Goldberg fights off both of them, and then Goldberg gets ready to hit a spear on Flair, but he spears Orton instead, who jumps in the line of fire. Then Flair pokes him in the eye, and then Goldberg, in a blind range, spears him too. Then all of a sudden, HBK invades the ring, and he's just kind of staring at Goldberg for a bit, and then he super kicks Orton. And then Goldberg hits a jackhammer on Flair. HBK then slaps Orton's hand on the mat, and then the show abruptly ends. Literally, he hits the 1, 2, 3, and then the show is over. Now, I don't know how long I've been talking for. I've been talking for 28 minutes. Thank God. I thought it was going to be a lot longer than that. But anyway, that's Raw. It was a decent show. There was a lot of funny stuff on here, but nothing really great. It was better than most Raws, I guess, because most Raws just put me to sleep. But this one at least kept me entertained. So that's it for me. I will see all of you later.